So any instrument, including your voice, has three main parts that create sound, okay? You've got to have something that actually starts the energy going, something that creates the sound itself, and then something that carries the sound, okay? And there's different fancy words that we use for that. So instruments produce sound by using three parts, and your first part is going to be called an initiator. What does it mean to initiate? To start, okay? To begin, to get going. So this is the part that literally starts the sound. So when I clap, what starts the sound? My hands hitting each other, okay? The second part is going to be the part of the instrument or your voice that vibrates, okay? So that's going to be called the vibrator, the vibrator. Let's think about it as a drum then, okay? Because that one's kind of hard to think of. So you have a drum, you hit it, the initiator is the drumstick hitting the drum. What vibrates? The drum head itself, okay, and the air in the drum. Okay, so then we can just have a little sound like that, and in this space, where it resonates, the resonator would be this room. What does it mean to resonate? If I say, that really resonated with me, or she was singing with a beautiful resonant tone, what does it mean? Like what? Like filling, okay, if that really stuck with me, like if I were to say that stuck with me, that resonated with me, that's where the sound grows, okay? The sound grows within the resonator. So, the initiator is what creates, you have a word choice there, creates the energy that is required to make sound. Okay, so like we said, it could be a drum, stick, or something like that. The vibrator is what disturbs or interferes with the air around it. And this creates sound waves. Okay, so this is going to actually send the waves out into the air. The resonator is the actual space in which the waves are turned into a true musical tone. It's the difference between humming and opening your mouth and singing. Ah, ah. It's going to sound beautiful. You're welcome, VIP kids. So this gives each instrument and voice a unique timbre, like we talked about a second ago, or tone color. Oops. Okay, so if you think about a guitar, playing a guitar, we're going to figure out what these three pieces are. The initiator would be either your hand, if you're just playing it with your hand, or maybe a pick, right? Because that strikes the string. So then what actually vibrates? The string itself. So the resonator would be the body. You know, a guitar is shaped kind of like that, and it's got a hole in the middle. So all that sound just bounces around inside the body and comes out of the hole of the guitar. And your voice, as a human being, is unique from other instruments, like a piano or a robot, okay, a computer-generated sound, because you have what we call articulators. So your articulators are your lips. You can go and p and b. Okay? They're your teeth. You can say t, t, t. Okay? You couldn't do that without teeth. You do like this. And your tongue. You can say yes because of your tongue. You can say la 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 because of your tongue. Otherwise, you would just be like all the time. But you have articulators to craft that sound into words, other syllables, things like that. Capiche? So what are your articulators? Lips, teeth, tongue. Say it with me. Ready, go. Lips, teeth, tongue. Love the energy. But how does my voice work, Miss Folks? Well, I'm so glad you asked, class. Well, if you said the larynx, you are right. This exact image, and I have some printouts for you, this exact image is going to be on your little mini quiz tomorrow, okay? So if you don't have your phone or you're taking notes, I can give you a printout, okay? So this is kind of a cut in half picture of a person's face. In here, through your nose, is the nasal cavity. It's this big empty space. So when you get a COVID-19 test, actually, they insert that thing right here. It goes like all the way back to this part of your nasal cavity. Okay, that's a long way. So like back in there. Ooh, yeah. So you can remember this is your nasal cavity because nose. So you'll have to label that. Okay, your oral cavity is your mouth. Mouth. Okay, it's where all your teeth and stuff are. This is your tongue, and I bet you didn't realize that your tongue is that big. Did you? So that's not all of your tongue. Your tongue goes like way down to the bottom of your chin. It's a huge muscle. Okay, this is all your tongue. So you'll have to label your tongue. Your epiglottis. Some of you might remember Mr. McCourt choking on his water, and I said, "Are you having an epiglottal malfunction?" And you're like, "What does that mean?" Well, here's what this means. Your epiglottis right here is this little like trap door. All right, so you have your trachea, also known as your windpipe. This is where air comes up and creates your voice. Okay, and behind that, you have your esophagus. That's for food. So when someone says it just went down the wrong pipe, it literally went down the wrong pipe because their epiglottis did not protect their windpipe, and some food or some water or something got through that wasn't supposed to and got caught up in their vocal cords. And that's why you're like, I can't talk, I swallowed some water. And so that's why that happens, okay? So your epiglottis goes like this when you swallow, and you can actually feel it. Put your fingers right here and swallow. You can feel it like disappear and then come back, okay? Super gross. And then your trachea, we just talked about, is another word for what? Windpipe. Okay, and then there's two more things I need you to actually label. It'll be vocal cord and esophagus. So your esophagus is behind your trachea. That's where food goes. Your vocal cords are actually inside of this mechanism called the larynx. So the larynx is like this whole thing, but the most important part that we need to learn is the vocal cords themselves. Okay? So those are two little muscles that touch and vibrate and stretch to create your voice. So when you sing, speak, anything like that, you use your vocal cords. Then here is a much more complicated version of what we just looked at, and I bet you didn't even realize that all of this stuff is going on in your head. So this is just from here up, not including your brain, not including any of that stuff. We've got your nasal cavity. Okay, you go up through here and back, okay, and then there's some tonsils back there. You have your eustachian tube right next to your tonsils, which is why when you have a sinus infection or you're starting to get sick, your ears hurt, okay, because your eustachian tube, which is what your auditory tube for hearing, is right next to your tonsils. So if your tonsils are inflamed and they're bothering you, they're right next to your eustachian tube, which is why a lot of times if you're sick, doing like this kind of hurts, because that's your eustachian tube right there. Okay, so you go down all here, blah, blah, blah. There's your epiglottis again. Esophagus. Okay, we have our soft palate, hard palate, teeth, this giant tongue here. It's insane, right? You probably didn't even realize that. Okay, and then you have your thyroid. Does anybody know what the thyroid gland actually does? So your thyroid is like this butterfly-shaped gland that covers your voice box. Okay, it's in front of it. And that is it controls your hormone production. So a lot of times if you have an underactive thyroid, you may have trouble losing weight, you may be tired, and if your thyroid is overactive, it produces way too much. You can be like really skinny, have trouble gaining weight, your eyes might kind of bulge out a little bit, you're hyperactive. Okay, so this controls your hormone production. I actually have a friend who studied opera for grad school, and she ended up getting cancer in her thyroid and had to have it removed. Okay, okay? And so now she has to take hormone pills for the rest of her life because this controls so much of what you are able to do, your metabolism and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so that's what that is. And then here is okay, so you see that when the vocal cords get stretched, what kind of pitch do we get? Higher. All right, and if they constrict a little bit and they become shorter, what kind of pitch do we get? Lower. So it's the same idea. Have you ever looked inside of like a grand piano? You see the strings, okay, and the little hammer hits them. What about like the highest note on the piano? What do those strings look like? They're tiny, they're thin, okay, and they're like this long. Okay, they're super short. But then as you move to the other side of the piano, that's why it's shaped like that, right? So here you have your higher notes, and as you go that way, you get your lower notes. So those strings are a lot wider, they're thicker, and they're longer, okay? And they're gonna have lower notes. Does that make sense? So when you're younger, your vocal cords are short and they're really thin. So that's why little kids talk like this. Okay? And as you get older, they thicken and they lengthen, which makes your voice deeper. Okay? Guys go through an even more exaggerated process. Usually people who are born male, when they hit puberty, their vocal cords enlarge, which is why a lot of times you'll see people who are born male have an exaggerated Adam's apple. Okay, and a lot of people who are born female really don't, because our vocal cords do change, our voices do change, but not as drastically as males who go through puberty. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay, that's it.